Hello, everybody, and welcome from Planet Fair with our coffee talk today. My name is Henrike von Platen, and I'm talking with
Margret Bjarnadóttir.
So
My
great to
voice
see
is
you
a
again.
little bit gone. It's because it's my teaching season. I do too much talking.
Well, you can make for another 8 minutes and then you get a rest, and maybe instead of a coffee, a nice tea with honey or something to smoothen your throat.
I see it. No, that's very true.
Cool. Margaret, I had some discussions the other day, and I wanted to talk about this topic with you. It started off with being not very global, but very local, and it was about the Austrian tariff system, the so-called Kollektivvertrag, very beautiful word, and a bit of the comparison of how that actually works, and that means that you have no minimum wages, but you have this legally binding minimum salary instrument inside this collective agreement. And then again, there came up a little bit of the difference to the German one, which actually have minimum wages for everybody, no matter of the tariff system they are in. And we were discussing these topics and thinking about how fair they actually are, especially as in Austria, you have the possibility, you have a minimum, it's a minimum. That means that you can put anything on top. And how do you then make sure that it's fair? And then there's one special thing that I remember years and years ago in Germany, when people were like talking, but if I'm in a tariff system, and they still do that today, then everything is fine. So tariff is like the good thing of pay structure, and everything else is like free floating. And we know that there are still unfairnesses inside tariff systems, and they usually start at the beginning of the whole story. And I wanted to know your opinion about this, because I think no matter if it's like Austrian Kollektivvertrag, German collective agreements, anywhere in the world, I think there's one thing that is the same issue everywhere. When I hire into one of those jobs and I get my first wage, how do I make sure that's fair and doesn't stick to me for the rest of my career in that company?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have taken away all of my answers.
Oh, no, that's not nice of me, but well, but I'm sure
No.
you can deep dive into my ideas.
No, for sure. No, so I mean, couple of thoughts that came up. So one is when you have this very structured system, the initial decision on where, in which category, in which box you go into is critical. So if we assume that the tariff system is fair, meaning it fairly pays for different jobs, and then typically what you have is that they award tenure within the organization, they might even award experience, and then it's critical that when the employee is hired, that they get fairly placed into, I always call it like the stairs, right? So so that they then progress as expected, right? So that's the critical decision-making point. And in the context of fair pay, then we need to think about how we make those decisions, ensure that they're unbiased. Another thought I had when you were describing the Austrian system is because what I heard was the tariff system only defines the minimum, but then you're free to do everything else, right? But then it's really important that we take a look at, okay, what is the difference between the minimum and the pay that everybody gets? And is that fair, right? So not only analyze everybody's pay, but actually the deviation from their minimum, because that would be super interesting and telling. And this is especially true if you're a smaller organization with a very detailed tariff system, so that when, you know, each employee almost becomes unique because they are in a unique place in the tariff system that is then used to justify their pay. So I think in this context, for example, the Austrian context, then I would have kind of two key pay equity questions, right? One, how do we ensure that the first decision is fair, that places you on your trajectory? And then how do we ensure that the deviation from the minimum pay is fair for all? Those are my two thoughts.
I really like that part on the deviation as well, because I remember having seen Austria company with exactly what you described, so many single people in single groups where you could say, okay, I mean, if I have 100 employees and everybody has their own job role, then I have zero pay gap. But that's it's like that's not what we want to see. How could you imagine what could be an efficient way to sometimes group them? Because I remember lots of different discussions to then again group those people somehow, but to not sort of do something double from the collective agreement. I mean, it's there. Sometimes collective agreements might be good, but sometimes they are not. But we cannot change the collective agreement. So how do we make sure that the grouping, by what could it be, so that it would still sort of make sense inside the collective agreement? Any thoughts on that?
So you're saying, if I understand you correctly, you're thinking, how would you, the fact that you have so many employees in a unique situation within the tariff agreement, how could you kind of group that together? Yeah, I mean, you would group it based on the jobs, basically. And, one thing that you can do if you kind of want to broaden things out from a kind of high equity analysis standpoint, what you can do is often people progress because of tenure within the organization or experience. What you can do is to group the job together and then use tenure and experience to kind of account for differences, right? But because then we're using it across all groups, so we get we get the statistical power that we need. And then if that doesn't bring your groups to have enough employees, what you can also do then is to go across jobs and group together substantially similar jobs, right? And then it would be an interesting analysis to do, for sure.
Yeah. But I like the version also, like I imagine what you said was, see if I got that right. If we would take the wage of somebody and we subtract the minimum wage that is set by the contract and leave just the stuff on top, and that money on top we have for all employees, and then we make an analysis, and then we would see if that is there is a difference to the first analysis, sort of. So you just do an analysis on the money over the minimum wage. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's critical if you're in a situation where you're working with a tariff system that is so detailed that is either isolating individual employees as their own group or creating groups that are single gendered. Because really then, everybody is unique,
Yeah.
which we all are, but everybody becomes unique in the analysis and we are really not getting at the gist of the equal pay gap.
Yeah. No, that's true. Thank you very much, Margret. I think any other last thought on the tariff, or we stop here and leave this as food for thought for all the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe our last thought is that, we can think about this beyond just the tariff system. So if I remember one of the Google equal pay cases some years back, that was focused on initial placement of software engineers. And the claim was that Google was placing women in kind of lower paying job trajectories, right? And if I remember things correctly, they won the case. So it's, going back to that initial decision that is so important. How do you make sure that you place people within your organization in an unbiased manner with a good, fair salary?
Cool. Thank you very much for that one. I think we need to Google that link from Google and then figure out more about that. Thank you very much, Margret. Looking forward to our next discussion these days.
Yeah, nice to see you, Henrike. Have a good one.
Bye-bye, Margret. Goodbye to everyone.
Bye.